Welcome to the itdvds.com YouTube channel. This is just a sample of the training available at itdvds.com. If you would like to see complete training, please go to itdvds.com. Now let's begin the sample. Okay, I've burnt the ISO image that we downloaded in the last movie to a DVD. I've inserted that DVD into my server and booted my server up. And it brings us to this ESX4 virtual infrastructure for the enterprise splash screen. And you can see the default option here is install ESX in graphical mode. You can hit enter to select it automatically, or as you can see when the time expires, it's going to go ahead and select that option for us. Now there are some other options like install ESX in text mode and also ESX scripted install using a USB with a ks.cfg file that we're going to talk about in the coming movies, but in this movie we're going to install from graphical mode. Now if you insert your DVD into your server, boot it up, and it doesn't bring you to this screen, let's say it boots into another operating system that's already on the hard drive, that means you need to go into your BIOS and change the boot order so that your CD-ROM drive is above your hard disk, because there's already an operating system on the hard disk, and if that's above your CD-ROM drive, then it's going to go ahead and boot to that, and it's not even going to look at the CD-ROM drive. And to get into the BIOS on a server, normally you press F9 or F2 while it's booting up. And once our ESX installer has finished loading, it brings us to the Welcome to the ESX Installer splash screen. I'm going to go ahead and click Next. Here we need to accept the end user license agreement, so I'll just go ahead and check the box to accept it and click Next. Now we're going to select our keyboard type. Mine's US English, which is the default, so I'll just leave it selected. If you've got a different type of keyboard, you're going to want to select it and then click Next. And this part is new to ESX4. We didn't have this with our ESX 3.5 install, and we can actually add custom drivers. So if a particular storage driver or RAID card driver or network card driver isn't on this installation DVD, we can add it here. We can select it, click Yes, and click Add. And we're going to need to add the ESX driver CD into the server. Click OK, add the particular driver, and then once we're done, it'll tell us to reinsert the ESX4 installation DVD. Now another reason we may want to add a driver is because we might be using hardware that's not on the compatibility list. Most likely though in a production environment we should be using hardware on a compatibility list, and we won't need to add drivers. Another reason we may have to add a driver is if we're using maybe an older installation DVD and the hardware that we're using came out after that DVD was created. So just another reason why we may have to add a driver. If that was the case, realistically we'd want to go out and get the latest ESX4 install CD, but who knows, there may be some reason we want to use an older version. So we have the option here. Once we've done that, we can click Next. Gives us a little warning here. It says the install wizard will load any drivers required for ESX. Once this step is completed, additional custom drivers cannot be loaded. So I'll go ahead and click Yes, and it's going to go ahead and load the drivers. And that completed. So I'll go ahead and click Next. Here we can enter a serial number if we'd like, and licensing is different with ESX4. We're now going to use serial numbers instead of license files. So we're going to talk about licensing a little bit later. If we're going to use this in trial mode, or if our licensing is on our vCenter server, we're going to want to select enter a serial number later. So I'll go ahead and click Next. Here's where we'll select our network adapter that we want to use for our service console. And this is kind of nice. It actually shows if the network adapter is connected or not. See, if I highlight this, it shows I have two network adapters. One is connected, one is not connected. So most likely I'm going to want to use the one that's connected for my service console. But before, with earlier installations, we didn't know if one was connected or not. So we may actually select the wrong network adapter, and it was actually very difficult to change it to a different network adapter if we couldn't even get to the service console. We had to actually do it from the command line. So I'm going to go ahead and select the one that's connected. And if we need to specify a VLAN ID, we'd want to check this box and enter the VLAN ID in here. And this is if the switch port that this NIC is connected to is configured for trunking, then we need to specify a VLAN ID. If not, then we're going to want to uncheck it or leave it unchecked and click Next. Here we're going to specify our network configuration. Give this server a static IP address. You can configure it for DHCP, but most likely in every situation you're going to want to give it a static IP address. So I'll go ahead and type one in. Also type in the appropriate subnet mask, gateway, and DNS. And I'm going to give it the IP address of 192.168.6.80, the appropriate subnet mask, appropriate gateway. And I've got my DNS servers at 192.168.6.100 and 192.668.6.101. Now, in a previous movie, we configured internal DNS already. So we know the IP address and host name we wanted to give it. And we want that to match up here to the host record that we entered in DNS. And my host name is going to be ESX02.itdvds.local. And this does need to be a fully qualified domain name, so I couldn't put just ESX02. Once I've got this set up, I'll usually want to click Test These Settings. And it's actually going to go out and connect to the network, make sure all these settings work properly. And it lets me know that no problems were detected with the network settings. Note, these settings are now active, and any further changes made in the network configuration screen will not be active until we press the test button again. So if we make changes, just press the test button again to make sure everything is working. So I'll click Next. And this is where we're going to configure our partitions, and we're actually going to continue this in part 2.